Timi woke up and something felt wrong. Within seconds, her heart dropped. Her flight to Canada had left 5 hours ago. But she knew one thing. She did not oversleep. She had been drugged. Panicking, she grabbed her bag, only to discover something even worse. Her visa was gone, and her half-sister, Josephine, was already on that flight, using her identity. But what neither of them knew was this: that flight would change both their lives forever. This is African Folktales with Nsinem. Listen carefully to this shocking story. Bola and Kunle were childhood friends, but somewhere along the way, friendship turned into love. It started with secret letters, stolen glances, and holding hands when no one was watching. But that innocent love came with a consequence they were not ready for. At just 16 years old, Bola was 6 months pregnant in boarding school. It was a cryptic pregnancy, and naive Bola had no idea she was pregnant. When her wealthy parents found out, they didn't see a scared child. They saw a family disgrace. They hid her away from the world until the day she gave birth. And the moment baby Timi was born, they made a decision that would break her forever. They took her child and handed her over to Kunle. Just like that. No goodbye, no choice. Bola cried, begged, but her parents gave her an ultimatum. Lose your child or lose your family. At 16, broken and powerless, Bola watched them take her baby away. And 1 week later, she was sent out of Nigeria. So tell me, if you were in her shoes, would you choose your child or a life of comfort and luxury? Little Timi was taken to Kunle, a boy who was barely ready to be a father. He lived with his grandmother, a kind woman who had already raised one abandoned child, because Kunle himself had been left behind by his own mother. And now, history was repeating itself. With his grandmother's help, Kunle raised Timi, finished school, and eventually became a doctor. For a while, life was finally good, until he met Stella. He met her at a bank, and from the moment he saw her, he couldn't look away. When she finished her transactions and stepped out of the bank, Kunle followed her. A few smooth words, a little confidence, and just like that, he got her number. What started as a simple meeting quickly turned into something serious. After 1 year of dating, Kunle proposed and Stella said yes. The wedding was beautiful. Everything seemed perfect until the day after. Kunle's grandmother showed up at their house, but she didn't come alone. And I know what you are thinking. What about little Timi? She came with her. But the next morning, she left alone because Kunle had kept a secret. He never told Stella that he already had a child. Before leaving, his grandmother dropped a bombshell. Timi is Kunle's daughter. She belongs here now. Timi was just 15. Stella was furious. She felt lied to, betrayed, humiliated. But instead of taking it out on Kunle, she turned her anger on Timi. And Kunle, he was too afraid to lose his new wife, so he stayed silent and played along. From that moment on, Timi stopped being a daughter and became a servant in her own father's house. Stella owned a big restaurant in Lagos. Just 1 week after Timi arrived, she sent her there, not as family, not as staff, but as free labor. No salary, no respect, no love. Life became unbearable. Timi didn't know her mother, didn't know where to find her, and she couldn't go back to her grandmother. So she was trapped between a father who wouldn't protect her and a stepmother who made her life a living hell. And then Stella got pregnant. The house changed overnight. What was once tension became cruelty. Timi was no longer just unwanted, she became a burden. "Don't stress me," Stella would snap, placing a hand on her stomach.
If anything happens to this baby, it's on you. From that day, every mistake, every delay became Timi's fault. She woke up before dawn to clean the house, cook, wash, and still rush to the restaurant. At night, when her body could barely stand, she returned home to more chores. No rest, no kindness. Sometimes she would pause, staring at other girls her age on the street, laughing, carefree, going to school. And for a moment, she would wonder, what did I do to deserve this life? But the worst pain was not Stella. It was her father. Kunle saw everything. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the burns on her hands, the way she flinched at every raised voice, and yet he said nothing. One evening, Timi returned late from the restaurant. A customer had delayed her. Before she could explain, Stella slapped her hard. The sound echoed through the house. Timi staggered back, holding her cheek, tears filling her eyes. She turned to her father, hoping, just hoping he would say something, anything. But Kunle's face was cold. "You are becoming too stubborn," he said quietly. "Apologize to your mother." Your mother. That word broke something inside her. Slowly, painfully, Timi knelt down. "I'm sorry, Ma," she whispered, even when she knew she had done nothing wrong.
From that day on, something inside Timi changed. She stopped talking, stopped hoping, stopped expecting love. She became silent, like someone just waiting for life to pass. But fate was not done with Timi yet. Though Timi was treated worse than a slave, inside that same house, love existed, just not for Timi. When Stella finally gave birth, the whole house was filled with joy. Kunle smiled again. He laughed, he celebrated. He became the father Timi had always wished for, but not for her, for the new baby. A little girl, soft, beautiful, innocent. They named her Josephine. From the very first day, Josephine was surrounded by everything Timi never had. Warmth, laughter, protection, love. Kunle would carry her for hours, rocking her gently like she was made of gold. Stella, she became a completely different woman. Gentle, caring, loving. The same woman who shouted at Timi now spoke in soft whispers to her child. And Timi watched it all, silently. But instead of hate, she felt something else. Love. She loved her little sister deeply. Anytime Josephine laughed, Timi smiled. Anytime she cried, Timi's heart broke. She didn't see her as their child. She saw her as her own. One afternoon, when Stella was resting, Timi quietly walked into the room. Josephine was awake, giggling softly in her crib. Timi moved closer, her heart beating fast. Slowly, carefully, she reached out her hand, just to touch her, just once. But suddenly, "Don't you dare!" Stella's voice cut through the air like a blade. Timi froze. "Don't you ever touch my child!" Stella snapped, rushing forward. "Your bad luck will not rub off on her." Timi stepped back immediately, her hands trembling. I just wanted to get out," Stella shouted. From that day on, Timi was never allowed near Josephine. Not to carry her, not to feed her, not even to sit close. It didn't matter how much love she had, she was treated like a stranger, like a danger. So she loved her sister from a distance, quietly, painfully. At the restaurant, life was just as hard. Long hours, endless work, no pay. But somehow, years passed and while Timi slaved for her father and his wife, her sister was pampered and loved. Life at home was bleak, but there was one small light in her darkness, or so she thought. A customer. Her name was Amanda. She came in often, always expensively dressed, calm, observant, and different. She noticed things others ignored. The way Timi limped sometimes from exhaustion, the way she forced a smile, the silence behind her eyes. Amanda always sat at the same table, And every single time she tipped Timi, not small money, good money, the kind that made the other workers whisper, "Who is that woman? It said she lives in Holland. Why is she always giving that girl money?" At first, Timi didn't understand it, but one day, as she dropped Amanda's food on the table, their eyes met. And for the first time, Amanda smiled at her. But this time, she didn't just take her food and eat quietly. She spoke. "Timi, how old are you?" The question caught her off guard. 22, Timi replied softly.
Amanda nodded slowly, as if confirming something in her mind. Then she leaned forward. "I have a brother," she said calmly. "He lives in Holland." Timi blinked, confused. "My brother saw your picture," Amanda continued, watching her carefully. "And he likes you." Timi froze. "He wants to marry you." For a moment, Timi thought she didn't hear correctly. Marriage? Her? "Auntie, I don't understand," she said quietly. Amanda reached into her bag and brought out her phone. She showed her a picture. A well-dressed man, handsome, confident. "He is a good man," Amanda said. "He will take care of you." Timi's heart started beating fast. No one had ever spoken about her future like that before. No one had ever offered her a way out. "I will not force you," Amanda added, "but think about your life." That night, Timi couldn't sleep. Marriage? To a stranger? She didn't even know what love felt like. All she knew was pain and survival. A few days later, Amanda returned. This time, she handed Timi a phone. "Talk to him," she said. And that was how it started. The calls. At first, it was awkward. Silence, short answers, forced conversations. The man introduced himself as David. He was polite, calm, respectful, but there was nothing. No spark, no connection, no warmth. Just two strangers trying to make sense of something neither of them truly felt. After a few calls, Timi became sure of one thing. This was not love. One evening, after the call ended, she looked at Amanda and shook her head. "I don't feel anything," she said honestly. "There is no chemistry." Amanda was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, slowly, gently, but firmly. "Love will come later." Timi frowned. "He will take care of you," Amanda continued. "He will send you to school." School. That word hit Timi deeply. A life she had only watched from afar. A dream she had buried long ago. "You will leave this place," Amanda added softly. "You will have a future." Timi's eyes filled with tears. A future. Something she had never dared to imagine for herself. "But why me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Amanda held her gaze. For a second, something flickered in her eyes. Something emotional, something hidden. But it disappeared just as quickly. "Because," Amanda said quietly, "you deserve more than this life." Timi looked down at her hands, rough, tired, worn from years of suffering. Then she thought of the house, of Stella, of her father, of Josephine, of a life where she existed but never truly lived. Slowly, she nodded. "I'll do it," she whispered. And in that moment, Timi didn't know that this decision would bring her closer to the truth about her life and the shocking truth of Amanda's true intentions. Timi stood in the living room that evening, her hands trembling, her heart beating like it wanted to escape her chest. I have something to say," she began softly. Kunle looked up from his phone, uninterested. Stella folded her arms, already irritated. "A woman at the restaurant, Amanda, she said her brother lives in Holland," Timi continued. "He wants to marry me and take me there." Silence. For a second,
Timi thought they would laugh or insult her, but instead coolly sat up straight. "Holland?" he asked quickly. "Yes, sir." "And he will take care of you?" Timi nodded. Kunle didn't even hesitate. "Then go," he said immediately. "It's a good opportunity." Just like that. No questions, no concern, no hesitation. Not even, "Are you sure?" Timi felt something twist inside her chest. This man, her father, was eager to send her away, to be rid of her. Stella forced a smile. "That's good," she said casually. "Very good." But inside, something dark had already begun to grow. That night, Stella couldn't sleep. She lay on her bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Timi, leaving Nigeria? Timi, going abroad? Timi, having a better life? No, it didn't sit right with her. It felt wrong, like something was being taken from her daughter. Josephine deserved that life. Josephine deserved luxury, education, opportunity. Not Timi, not that girl. Stella turned to the side, her eyes hardening. A decision had been made. The next day, Stella went to see Amanda. "I heard about your brother," she said, forcing a polite smile. "I think there has been a mistake." Amanda frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Stella leaned closer. "My daughter, Josephine, is a better match." Amanda's expression changed immediately. "No," she said firmly. "I chose Timi." Stella's smile faded. "Josephine is more refined, more educated, more suitable." "I said no," Amanda repeated, her voice calm but firm. "My brother asked for Timi." For a moment, the air between them became tense. Then Stella smiled again. But this time, it didn't reach her eyes. Preparations continued. Papers were processed. Arrangements were made. For the first time in her life, Timi felt hope. Real hope. She packed her few belongings carefully, holding on to the thought that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. But Stella had other plans. The night before the journey, Stella walked into Timi's room. For once, she was calm, almost kind. "I made you tea," she said softly. Timi hesitated. This was new, too new, but she didn't question it. She took the cup. "Thank you, ma," she said quietly. Stella watched her until she drank it all. That night, Timi slept deeply, too deeply. Morning came, but Timi did not wake. Stella moved quickly. She entered the room, checked her pulse. Still asleep. Good. She opened Timi's bag, removed her passport, her visa, her travel documents. Then she turned to Josephine, dressed, ready, confused but obedient. "You are going on a trip," Stella said gently. "What about Timi?" Josephine asked. "Don't worry about her," Stella replied coldly. By the time Amanda arrived, everything had been arranged. Josephine stood there with Timi's documents. Amanda's eyes widened. "What is this?" she asked sharply. Stella stepped forward. "It's done," she said. "She's the one going." Amanda's face hardened. "This is wrong." Stella leaned in slightly. "Or maybe this is an opportunity," she said quietly. "My daughter will make you proud. Her passport and everything is set." Amanda hesitated. Just for a moment, her eyes moved from Josephine to her mother, then back to Josephine. A long silence followed, and then Amanda took a deep breath. "Let's go," she said. Hours later, a plane lifted into the sky, carrying Josephine, living Timi's life. And back at home, Timi finally opened her eyes, her head spinning, her body weak. Something was wrong, very wrong. Within seconds, her heart dropped. Her flight had left 5 hours ago. Timi staggered out of the house, her head still spinning, her heart racing wildly in her chest. No, this can't be happening," she muttered. She didn't even change her clothes, didn't think, didn't stop. She just ran out of the gate onto the street and straight toward the only place she could think of, the airport. The journey felt endless. Every second felt like her life was slipping further away. Please, let it still be there," she whispered under her breath. Her hands trembled as she clutched her bag, empty now, stripped of everything that mattered. When she finally got there, breathless, sweating, desperate, she ran to the counter. "My flight, please. The Holland flight this morning," she said, her voice shaking. The attendant typed quickly, then paused. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "That flight left hours ago." Timi's world collapsed. Just like that. "No, please check again," she begged. "There must be a mistake." But deep down, she already knew. It was gone. Her chance, her escape, her future, gone. Slowly, Timi stepped away from the counter. The noise of the airport faded. Voices, announcements, footsteps, all became distant. Like she was no longer part of the world around her. She walked out of the airport, not knowing where she was going, not caring. Her mind was blank, her heart empty. Cars sped past her on the road, horns blaring, people shouting, but Timi didn't hear anything, didn't see anything. She just kept walking like someone already lost. And then a loud screech, a flash of headlights, a sharp impact. Everything went black. Voices echoed faintly. "Someone help! She's bleeding! Call an ambulance!" Timi lay on the road, motionless, broken, still. The siren wailed in the distance, getting closer. At the hospital, doctors rushed her in. "Head trauma," one of them said quickly. "Pulse is weak. Get her to the emergency room." Hours passed, then days, and finally, Timi opened her eyes. Slowly, weakly, the bright hospital lights hurt her vision. She blinked, trying to adjust. A nurse noticed immediately. "Doctor, she's awake." A man in a white coat rushed in. "Can you hear me?" he asked gently. Timi stared at him, confused, lost. Her lips parted slightly. "Where am I?" she whispered. The doctor exchanged a quick glance with the nurse. "You're in the hospital. You were in an accident." Timi swallowed hard. Her head throbbed. Everything felt strange, empty. "What is your name?" the doctor asked carefully. Silence. Timi frowned slightly, trying to think, trying to remember, but there was nothing. No memories, no past, no identity, just darkness. Her eyes filled with fear. I don't know," she whispered. The room fell silent. The doctor sighed softly. "She has amnesia," he said quietly. And just like that, Timi lost everything. Not just her future, but her past as well. Somewhere far away, a plane continued its journey to Holland, carrying a girl living a life that wasn't hers, and in a hospital bed, a girl who had suffered all her life, had just forgotten it all. Comfort's hands were still shaking as she stood outside the hospital ward, pacing back and forth. She had been in a hurry trying to get to the airport, but she hadn't meant to hit her. Her mind had drifted for just a second. The image of Timi's body hitting her car replayed in her mind over and over again. "What have I done?" she whispered, clutching her head. She had rushed her to the hospital immediately, paid every bill without hesitation, and stayed every single day, waiting, hoping the girl would wake up. And now she had. But this was worse. "She doesn't remember anything," the doctor said calmly, adjusting his glasses. "No name, no family, no address, nothing." Comfort swallowed hard. "So, what happens now?" The doctor sighed. "Medically, she's stable. She can be discharged. But," he paused, lowering his voice, "we can't send her out like that. She has nowhere to go." Comfort's heart skipped. Nowhere to go. Her eyes drifted to the room where Timi sat quietly on the bed, staring at her hands like a child lost in a strange world. For a moment, fear crept into Comfort's heart. What if she's dangerous? What if she's a criminal? What if bringing her home ruins everything? She exhaled deeply. Slowly, She walked into the room. Timi looked up at her. Those same soft, confused eyes. Eyes that held no hatred, no cunning, no darkness. Just fear and innocence. "Ma," Timi said softly, her voice fragile. "Do you know me?" That question pierced straight into Comfort's soul. Comfort's chest tightened. She didn't know who this girl was, but something deep inside her spirit whispered clearly, "This one is pure." She forced a gentle smile and sat beside her. "No," she said softly, taking her hand. "But you're not alone." Timi blinked, her eyes already filling with tears. Comfort squeezed her hand. "You can come home with me." Timi stared at her, shocked. "Home?" she whispered. "Yes," Comfort nodded. "Until we figure things out. You'll stay with me." A tear slipped down Timi's cheek. For the first time since she woke up, she felt safe. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, the plane landed in Holland. Josephine stepped out, her eyes wide with excitement as the cold air brushed against her skin. "This is it," she whispered, smiling to herself. "My new life." Amanda walked beside her, unusually quiet. They got into a car waiting outside and drove through silent streets until they stopped in front of a tall, unfamiliar apartment building. "This is where you'll stay," Amanda said shortly. Josephine frowned slightly. "Where is your brother?" "You'll meet him," Amanda replied, already stepping out. Something didn't feel right, but Josephine ignored it. She carried her bag and followed Amanda inside. The apartment was strange, too quiet, too empty. Before she could ask another question, two men stepped out from one of the rooms. Josephine froze. Her smile faded. "Who are they?" she asked slowly. Amanda turned to her, and for the first time, her face had no warmth. "Give me your passport," she said flatly. Josephine blinked. "What?" "Your passport," Amanda repeated, her voice now cold and commanding. Confused but nervous, Josephine slowly handed it over. The moment Amanda took it, she handed it to one of the men. Josephine's heart dropped. "Wait, why are you giving him my passport?" she asked, panic rising. No one answered. The man flipped through it, then tucked it into his jacket. Josephine stepped back. No, give it back to me," she said, her voice trembling. Amanda folded her arms. "You won't be needing it anymore." Silence. Dead silence. Josephine's breathing became uneven. "What do you mean, I won't be needing it?" she asked, her voice cracking. One of the men smirked. "That passport," he said slowly, "that's not yours anymore." Josephine's world began to spin. "Amanda, what is going on?" she cried. Amanda looked at her, cold, distant, like a stranger. "You think my brother wants to marry you?" she scoffed. Josephine's legs weakened. "Amanda, please," she whispered. "You've been sold," Amanda said bluntly. The words hit like a bomb. Josephine gasped. No, that's not true." She shook her head violently. My mother sent me here." "Exactly," Amanda cut in sharply. And she knew what she was doing. Josephine froze. Her entire body went cold. "No," she whispered. But deep down, the truth had already settled. The men stepped closer. Josephine backed away, tears streaming down her face. "You are going to work for us now," one of them said. Her scream echoed through the apartment, but no one came. No one heard. And just like that, the life Stella had protected for her daughter turned into her worst nightmare. While the girl she tried to destroy was finally experiencing kindness for the very first time. Amanda kept her word, at least on the surface. Every few weeks, money began to enter Stella's account. Large amounts, bigger than anything she had ever received at once. At first, Stella was shocked. Then, she became comfortable. Soon, she became proud. She started telling people, "My daughter is in Holland," she would say, with a wide smile. "She's doing very well. They've taken good care of her." Her friends would gasp in admiration. "Ah, Stella, you're lucky, oh," someone would say. "See as your daughter just travel and make it." Stella would laugh, adjusting her wrapper proudly. "I always knew she was destined for greatness." each alert that entered her phone only made her chest swell more. Expensive things began to enter the house. New furniture, jewelry, even her restaurant got a full upgrade. And whenever anyone asked about Josephine, Stella painted a perfect picture. She is working with big people, she would say, very big people. She hardly even has time to call. But deep down, there was always a small voice, a quiet whisper she tried to ignore. Because sometimes, late at night, when everything was silent, Stella would remember the look in Josephine's eyes the day she left, and something didn't sit right. But the money always drowned that voice. Always. Meanwhile, in Holland, Josephine's reality was far from the beautiful story her mother told. The moment her passport was taken, everything changed. Her freedom disappeared instantly. She was moved from that apartment to another location, smaller, tighter, controlled. The windows were always locked, the doors always watched. She wasn't allowed to go anywhere alone. Every movement monitored, every word controlled. They gave her rules, strict rules, when to wake up, when to eat, when to sleep, what to say, what to do. Josephine cried the first few nights. She begged, she screamed, she refused. But each time she resisted, the consequences became harder. Not loud, not dramatic, but enough to break her spirit little by little. Sometimes they would lock her in a room for hours. Sometimes they would deny her food. Sometimes they would simply remind her that she had no passport, no identity, and no way home. And that fear, that helplessness began to sink deep into her bones. Then it started, quietly. At first, it was just too many days. She told herself it would stop, that it was temporary, that somehow she would escape. But it didn't stop. Slowly, the numbers increased. Days blurred into nights. Faces came and went. Strangers, all of them. After a while, Josephine stopped counting. She couldn't remember their faces anymore, couldn't separate one day from another. She became a shadow of herself, moving, speaking, existing, but not really living. Smile, they would tell her. Don't cause trouble. And she obeyed, not because she wanted to, but because she had learned what happened when she didn't. Every night, she returned to that small room, quieter than before, emptier than before, like pieces of her were being taken, one by one. And that was when it finally hit her, the truth she had been running from. She had not been brought here for marriage. She had been sold. A tear rolled down her cheek as she lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. "Mommy," she whispered brokenly. And for the first time, she understood. Her mother's jealousy, her envy, her desperation to replace Timi had not secured her future. It had destroyed it. It had saved Timi and thrown her into a nightmare she could not wake up from. Meanwhile, back in Nigeria, Stella continued to smile, to boast, to spend, completely unaware that every kobo she enjoyed was stained with her daughter's silent tears. Months passed and Timi remembered nothing. Not her past, not her pain, not even her own name. It was as if her life before the accident had been completely erased. And in that empty space, comfort filled it with love, real love, the kind Timi had never known before. Comfort was wealthy, very wealthy. Her home was large, beautifully furnished, with quiet luxury in every corner. But despite all that, it was empty. No laughter, no family, just silence, until Timi came. Comfort took care of her like a mother would. She bought her beautiful clothes, soft perfumes, jewelry, things Timi had never even dreamed of owning. She made sure she ate well, rested well, and smiled often. Slowly, Timi began to change. The fear in her eyes faded, the sadness softened, and for the first time in her life, she felt valued, she felt seen. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Timi turned to Comfort. "Ma," she said softly, "do I have a family?" Comfort paused. The question lingered in the air. She forced a small smile. Everyone has a family, she replied carefully. Timi hesitated. What about you? She asked. Your family, where are they? For a brief moment, something flickered in Comfort's eyes. Pain, distance, regret. She looked away. I'm not close to them anymore, she said quietly. Life happened. Timi watched her, sensing there was more, but she didn't push. After a short silence, Comfort added, My husband lives in Canada. We don't have children. Timi's heart softened instantly. She reached out and held Comfort's hand. You're not alone anymore, she said gently. Comfort looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled. A genuine smile. No, she whispered. I'm not. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the bond between them grew stronger. Comfort didn't just care for Timi anymore. She had grown deeply attached to her. Sometimes she would watch Timi laugh or talk, and a strange fear would creep into her heart. The fear that one day Timi would remember everything and leave. One afternoon, they decided to go shopping. Comfort insisted, as always. Today, I'll spoil you, she said with a playful smile. Timi laughed. You already do that every day. But Comfort wasn't joking. They walked into one of the most expensive boutiques in Lagos. The attendant immediately recognized Comfort and welcomed her warmly. Pick anything you like, Comfort said. Anything. Timi shook her head, smiling shyly. I don't need all these things. I want to, Comfort insisted. Let me. They moved through the store together. Dresses, shoes, bags, until they got to the jeans section. Timi picked up a pair, studying it absent-mindedly, and then it hit a sharp pain. And then Timi screamed. Ah! She cried out, clutching her head. The jeans fell from her hand. Are you okay? Comfort asked, alarmed. But Timi was already shaking. Her breathing became erratic. My head! My head! She cried, pointing at a lady. Flashes, voices, memories trying to break through. Too fast, too overwhelming. Make it stop, she screamed. People in the store turned to stare. Before Comfort could reach her, Timi collapsed. Her body hit the floor, unconscious. Call someone, Comfort shouted, panic rising in her voice. Get water, do something. And then a woman stepped forward from the small crowd. She looked down at Timi, her eyes widening slightly. Timi, she called softly. Comfort froze, her head turned towards the woman. Excuse me, she said quickly. Do you know her? The woman didn't answer immediately. She simply stared at Timi for a few seconds longer, her expression unreadable. Then she scoffed. And just like that, she turned and walked away. Comfort stood there, confused, unsettled. Wait, she called after her. You called her Timi. Do you know her? But the woman didn't stop, didn't look back. She disappeared into the crowd like she was never there. Comfort's heart began to race. Her eyes slowly returned to Timi's unconscious body on the floor. Timi, she whispered. The name echoed in her mind. That was the first time she was hearing it. And suddenly, everything felt like it was about to change. A big shout out goes to Jelly, watching from Zambia, and Linda, watching from Antigua and Barbuda. Your comments made my day. Back to the story. Timi was rushed to the hospital again, sirens cutting through the Lagos traffic as Comfort sat in the back seat, holding her hand tightly. You'll be fine, she kept whispering, even though fear gripped her heart. Hours later, Timi's eyes fluttered open. This time, it was different. Her breathing changed. Her eyes darted around the room, not in confusion, but in recognition. Then suddenly, tears filled her eyes. Grandma, she whispered. Comfort leaned forward immediately. Timi, she called softly. Timi turned to her and broke down completely. I remember, she cried. I remember everything. Comfort froze. Her heart dropped. Everything? She asked slowly, and Timi nodded. What followed broke Comfort completely.
Timi told her everything, from the moment she was brought into her father's house, to the cruelty, the suffering, the hunger, the insults, the way she was treated like nothing. She spoke about Stella, the woman who made her life a living hell. She spoke about her father, who watched and did nothing. And then, the final betrayal. How she was supposed to travel, how she ran to the airport, how everything was taken from her.
By the time she finished, Comfort was already in tears. "Oh my God," she whispered, covering her mouth. "What kind of wickedness is this?" Timi wiped her tears slowly. "I don't want to go back there," she said firmly. Comfort looked at her. "You have to," she said gently. "They are still your family." "No!" Timi shook her head immediately. "They stopped being my family a long time ago." Her voice trembled. "Please, let me stay with you. I don't need anything. I can even be your maid. Just don't send me back there." That word hit Comfort hard. Maid. The very life Timi had escaped. Comfort held her face gently. "You will never be a maid in my house," she said firmly. "Never." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You deserve better than that." Timi sobbed quietly. "Then please, don't take me back there." Comfort closed her eyes briefly. This was the part she had been dreading. "We have to face them," she said softly. "They need to answer for what they did to you." Timi looked away, her body tense, her heart unwilling. But deep down, she knew. Running away wouldn't change anything. The following day, evening time, the sky was painted in soft orange and fading blue as Comfort's car pulled up in front of Kunle's house. Timi's heart began to pound heavily in her chest. Memories flooded back. Pain, fear, betrayal. "I'm here," Comfort said gently, placing a reassuring hand on hers. Timi nodded slowly. They stepped out of the car. Each step toward the house felt heavier than the last. Comfort pushed the door open without knocking, and what they saw inside made her blood boil instantly. Stella and Kunle were seated comfortably in the living room, laughing, relaxed, completely at peace. A plate of fried chicken sat between them, bottles of cold beer sweating on the table, like nothing had ever happened, like no life had been destroyed. Stella was the first to notice. The smile on her face disappeared instantly. Kunle followed her gaze and froze. The bottle in his hand nearly slipped. Silence fell, heavy, dangerous. If you enjoyed this story, do give me a thumbs up. Share this story with a friend or two that will enjoy it. Remember to subscribe if you haven't. We share interesting African stories on this channel that you will definitely enjoy. Back to the story. Kunle? Comfort said, not believing her eyes. She froze in the doorway, her hand still gripping Timi's shoulder as the words hung heavy in the room. Kunle's face went pale and he stumbled backward, hands raised. "Bola Comfort Remy?" he stammered, recognition dawning in his eyes. I. Timi's head swiveled between Kunle and Comfort, confusion written all over her face. What's happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Comfort's eyes burned with fury and grief. Without warning, she lunged forward, grabbing Kunle by the collar of his shirt. Her fingers dug into the fabric as her voice shook with anger. "So you maltreated my child?" she demanded, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "And your grandmother, your own mother, refused to tell me how to find her?" Kunle tried to pull back, but Comfort's grip was iron. His lips parted, but no words came. Timi stepped closer, her hand shaking. "Mother?" she whispered uncertainly, looking at Comfort. "Yes, Timi," Comfort said softly, her fury momentarily tempered by tenderness as she looked at the girl she had come to love like her own. "I've been searching for you, always." Kunle's face was a mixture of shock, guilt, and fear. I didn't," he began, but Comfort's eyes bored into him, stopping him in mid-sentence. "You didn't what?" she spat. "Watch your child suffer? Stand by while she was treated like a servant in her own home? Tell me, Kunle, did you even think about her? About what she went through?" Kunle couldn't say a word. The shame he felt was evident on his face. Comfort's eyes blazed as she stepped forward, her voice shaking with anger and pain. "And you," Comfort said as she focused her anger on Stella,
"How dare you? How dare you treat my child like a slave in her father's house?" she shouted.
You are hard-hearted. Would you wish what you did to my child to be done to yours? Comfort asked Stella, but Stella rolled her eyes. She could care less. Kunle interrupted her, trying to calm her down. I'm sorry, Bola. I didn't mean to. You did mean it, Comfort interrupted, her voice rising. You saw her struggle, saw her beaten down, humiliated in her own home, and you did nothing to stop it. Worse, you encouraged it. My Timi, my child, was treated like a servant in her own father's house, and you laughed. You punished her, and you denied her every ounce of love she deserved. Kunle's face was frozen, guilt etched deep. Timi stood behind Comfort, tears streaming silently, watching the woman who had become her guardian speak the truth that she couldn't find the words for. Comfort's voice softened for a brief moment, trembling with sorrow. And you think because you are loved and pampered that you had the right to destroy my daughter? You made her life a living hell. Stella's mouth opened and closed. She had no words. The weight of her actions finally hit her, the cruelty, the lies, the control she had held over Timi's life. Comfort stepped closer, her eyes locking onto Stella's. You will never touch her like that again. You will never treat her as anything less than the daughter she is. And if you do, I swear, I will make sure the world knows what kind of person you are. Kunle finally spoke, his voice broken. Comfort, No, she snapped, turning to him. You watched this happen. You let her suffer. You let your own child live in fear in her house, under your roof. You will take responsibility too. Both of you will never see her again. Timi's lips trembled as she whispered, Thank you. Comfort pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her like she never wanted to let go. For the first time in years, Timi felt seen. Not as a servant, not as an afterthought, but as a child who had been loved and protected, and finally, someone who had justice standing beside her. After the confrontation, Comfort took Timi by the hand. Come on, she said softly, her voice gentle but firm. We're leaving. You don't need to stay here a second longer. Timi hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the house, the place that had held so much pain, so many years of silent suffering. Then she nodded, letting Comfort guide her out. Kunle and Stella remained frozen, guilt and shock written across their faces, but Timi didn't look back, not this time. They got into Comfort's car. The air inside was quiet, heavy with emotion. Timi stared out the window, watching the city blur past, memories and pain swirling in her mind. Comfort reached over and held her hand, squeezing gently. Timi, Comfort began, her voice breaking. I am so sorry. I should have never let this happen. I should have been there for you sooner. I abandoned you, even though I promised myself I would protect you. I failed you, and I have regretted it every single day. Timi turned to her, tears streaming freely. You found me now. That's what matters, she whispered. You didn't abandon me this time. Comfort shook her head, sobbing quietly. No, my child, I did abandon you. I let the world take you from me, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't even find you. But I promise, from this moment on, I will never leave your side. You will never be alone again. Timi leaned into her, feeling the warmth of a mother's love for the first time in years. I forgive you, she murmured, her voice breaking. I just want to be with you now. I want to be safe. Comfort hugged her tightly, rocking her gently in the seat of the car. Safe, my Timi. You are safe now, and I will make sure of it. From now on, it's just you and me. We'll heal together. We'll find your strength again. Timi rested her head against Comfort's shoulder, letting herself feel the weight of the years of pain finally lifting, even if just a little. For the first time in her life, she felt hope. Hope that she could reclaim her life. Hope that she could be loved without conditions. And hope that the nightmare of the past could finally end. Comfort spent the next few days preparing Timi for a fresh start. She took her to the airport, helping her with all the travel arrangements. This time, there were no secrets, no manipulations. Just a loving guardian making sure her child had a chance at the life she had always deserved. This time, there were no secrets, no manipulations, just a loving mother making sure her child had a chance at the life she had always deserved. Timi held Comfort's hand tightly as they boarded the plane. Her heart was full of gratitude and hope. "Thank you for never giving up on me," she whispered. Comfort squeezed her hand. "My Timi, you've been through too much. Now it's your turn to live, to dream, to be free." Meanwhile, back in Lagos, Kunle and Stella were at home, still trying to process the whirlwind of events that had unfolded. The house was quieter than usual, the absence of Timi leaving a strange emptiness. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Stella, distracted and wary, went to open it. To her shock, a very haggard and tired Josephine stood there. Her clothes were worn, her eyes red from crying, and her small frame trembled with exhaustion. "Josephine, what?" Stella began, but the sight of her daughter's state silenced her. Kunle rushed forward, alarmed. Stella quickly took Josephine inside, guiding her to a chair. "What happened? Where have you been?" she asked, panic rising in her voice.
"When did you come back from Holland? What happened to Amanda and your husband?" Stella asked her daughter. Josephine's voice trembled as she recounted her ordeal. She told them of the people who had deceived her, of how she had been taken far from home, and how she had struggled to survive in a world she didn't understand. Every word hit Kunle and Stella like a blow. They could not deny the pain their daughter had endured. Kunle lowered his head, shame washing over him. Stella's face was pale, a mixture of fear and guilt. They realized painfully that their actions or inaction had allowed the worst to happen to the child they had claimed to love. Josephine finished, her small voice shaking. "I told one of the men and he told an NGO my story, and they were able to save me. Madam Amanda has been arrested." Stella's voice faltered. I failed you, Josephine. I am so sorry." Kunle nodded silently, tears forming in his eyes.
They had no words to undo the past, only a promise to do better. Outside, Timi was starting a new life in Canada, free from fear, free from cruelty, and finally surrounded by love and safety. Her journey had been long and painful, but she had survived, and she had been given a second chance. If you were Timi, would you forgive your father and stepmother, or walk away forever? And do you think her mother deserved forgiveness after everything that happened? Share your thoughts in the comments. Life will test your resilience in ways you never imagine. Cruelty and deceit may shadow your path, but love, courage, and truth have the power to set you free. Never give up on yourself, and never forget that even in the darkest moments, hope can guide you toward the life you deserve. If you enjoyed this story, I am sure you'll enjoy this story on your screen. Click to watch and I'll see you there.